Welcome to Sleepy Travel Stories. Tonight, let me take you on a journey to a faraway place. Close your eyes, relax, and let the world drift away. Your body has found its rhythm now with Zara's movement, no longer consciously adjusting to each step, but flowing with her gait as naturally as if you'd been born to this form of travel. The slight soreness that came with unfamiliar positioning has faded, replaced by a different kind of awareness. A sense of being perfectly balanced, perfectly supported, free to let your attention wander wherever it wants to go. And there's so much to observe. The way the desert's apparent emptiness reveals layer upon layer of complexity the longer you look. Plants that seemed absent at first glance prove to be everywhere once your eyes adjust to their subtle presence. Tiny succulents hiding in the shade of larger rocks, hardy grasses that have found ways to thrive in soil that looks utterly barren, even small wildflowers, desert marigolds and ghost plants, adding unexpected splashes of color to the muted palette. Birds too, more than you would have imagined. Not just the occasional hawk riding thermals high overhead, but smaller species that flit between the scattered vegetation. Desert sparrows with their buff-colored feathers that blend perfectly with the sand, roadrunners that dart across open patches with comic dignity, and somewhere in the distance, the haunting call of a sandgrouse making its evening flight toward water. The air itself seems to have texture here, different from the heavy atmosphere of humid climates or the thin bite of high altitudes. It's substantial without being thick, dry without being harsh, and it carries scents and sounds with unusual clarity. You can smell Hassan's tea brewing, though his camel is 50 yards ahead and you haven't seen him light a fire. You can hear the whispered conversations of desert mice preparing for their nighttime activities, though they remain completely invisible among the rocks and scrub. The sun touches the horizon now, and the real show begins. This isn't the quick sunset of tropical regions or the drawn-out fade of northern summers, but something entirely unique to these latitudes and elevations. The light seems to concentrate itself, becoming more golden, more intense, even as it begins to dim. Shadows stretch across the dunes in perfect geometric patterns, each ridge and valley clearly defined in the slanted illumination. Colors that were invisible moments before suddenly emerge from the landscape. The sand reveals itself to be not uniform tan, but a complex mixture of rose and gold and cream, with veins of darker minerals creating abstract patterns that shift and flow as your perspective changes with Zara's steady steps. Rock formations glow like embers, their surfaces catching and reflecting light in ways that make them seem almost luminescent. And then, in what feels like a single moment but must actually span several minutes, the sun disappears below the horizon, leaving behind a sky that seems to hold all the light it has collected throughout the day. Stars begin to appear, not gradually, but suddenly, as if someone has begun lighting candles in a vast darkened room. First, just the brightest ones, Venus, now joined by Jupiter, and the first magnitude stars that form the framework of the constellations. But you can sense the others waiting, growing stronger as the sky continues to darken and your eyes adjust to this new reality. The temperature drops perceptibly now, and Hassan calls a soft greeting in Arabic. His voice carries a note of satisfaction, as if this transition from day to night never fails to please him, no matter how many times he has witnessed it. The camels seem to sense the change too, their steps becoming somehow more purposeful, their bells creating a different music in the thinner air. This is when the desert truly comes alive. You realize the daytime was just preparation for this, the real desert, the ancient desert, the desert that exists in the space between earth and infinite sky, where silence has weight and darkness reveals rather than conceals. Your journey to the edge of forever has truly begun. The caravan master's voice carries softly across the gathered group, speaking in Arabic first, then French, then English, the words flowing like water over worn stones. We move with the rhythm of the desert now, he says, his weathered hands adjusting the lead rope of the first camel. Let the animals choose the pace. They know this ancient road better than any of us. You settle deeper into your saddle, feeling the worn leather warm beneath you, shaped by countless other travelers who have made this same journey across the centuries. Your camel shifts beneath you with a gentle swaying motion, and you notice how different this feels from the stationary mounting earlier. There's a living rhythm here, a gentle rocking that seems to match your heartbeat, then gradually slow it. The animal's breathing creates a subtle rise and fall that you can feel through the saddle, through your legs, up into your spine. It's like being cradled by something infinitely patient, infinitely wise. The golden hour light transforms everything it touches, and as the caravan begins to move, you watch the shadows of the camels stretch long across the sand, creating moving patterns that dance and shift with each step. The lead camel's bells set the tempo, not hurried, not urgent, just steady as a meditation chant. Behind you, the bells of the other camels join in, creating layers of sound that blend and separate like voices in a distant choir. The sand beneath the camel's wide feet makes almost no sound, just the softest whisper, like pages turning in an ancient book. Occasionally, you hear the creak of leather, the gentle jingle of metal rings on the harnesses, the quiet breathing of your fellow travelers. But mostly, there is that remarkable desert silence, broken only by the bells and the almost inaudible rhythm of padding feet on sand. You realize you're leaving the last traces of the settled world behind now. The village has faded to a small cluster of lights in the distance, and ahead stretches nothing but the endless roll of dunes, painted gold and amber by the setting sun. The horizon seems to breathe, shifting subtly as the light changes, as the caravan moves, as your perspective shifts with each gentle step of your camel. The temperature is perfect now, that sweet spot between the heat of day and the chill of night. The air feels silk smooth against your skin, carrying scents you are still learning to identify. There's something green and growing, perhaps from an oasis many miles ahead that the wind remembers. Something warm and animal from the camels and their sweet breath. Something indefinably ancient, as if the very sand holds memory in its grains. Your camel finds its rhythm in the line of animals, and you feel yourself naturally matching that rhythm too. Your breath slows to match the pace. Your shoulders relax into the gentle side-to-side motion. Your hands rest easily on the pommel of the saddle, no longer gripping, just resting, The desert is teaching you its first lesson. There is no hurry here. Time moves differently when measured in the soft percussion of camel bells and the gradual shift of shadows across sand. The caravan master rides ahead, his white robes flowing behind him, and you watch how he moves with his camel as if they are one creature. Sometimes he turns in his saddle to check on the group, and when his eyes meet yours, he nods with a small smile. There's something deeply reassuring in that gesture, a promise that you are safe, that this journey has been made countless times before, that the desert will care for you if you learn to move with its rhythms rather than against them. The sun continues its descent, and the golden hour light deepens, becoming richer, more amber. The dunes around you seem to glow from within, as if lit by some internal fire. Your camel's shadow has grown longer still, stretching out beside you like a companion walking alongside. The bells have found their perfect cadence now, and you realize you've stopped consciously listening to them. They've become part of the background of your being, like your heartbeat, like your breath. A gentle breeze picks up, and you feel it first on your face. Then watch as it moves across the sand in visible waves, creating tiny avalanches on the steepest slopes of the dunes, erasing footprints, smoothing rough patches, continuously sculpting and resculpting the landscape. The desert is never quite the same from one moment to the next. You realize it's alive in its own way, breathing and shifting and changing with each breath of wind. Your fellow travelers have grown quiet now too, each lost in their own communion with this ancient place. Occasionally, you hear a soft word of wonder, a gentle laugh, the rustle of someone adjusting their position in their saddle. But mostly, there is just the sound of the caravan itself, the bells, the soft footfalls, the creak of leather, the whisper of robes in the breeze. The horizon ahead begins to show the first subtle signs of evening. The sky directly above is still blue, but at the edges, where it meets the sand, there are hints of deeper colors beginning to gather. Not sunset yet, but the promise of sunset. Your camel seems to sense this too, lifting his head slightly, flaring its nostrils as if reading messages in the wind that you cannot yet understand. You find yourself thinking about all the travelers who have made this same journey, merchants carrying silk and spices, pilgrims seeking sacred places, nomads following ancient routes between water sources. The path you're traveling feels worn smooth, not just by wind and sand, but by the passage of countless feet over countless centuries. There's something deeply comforting in this continuity, in being part of a story so much larger than yourself. The bells continue their gentle music, and you realize they're creating a kind of moving meditation. Each step forward takes you deeper into the desert's embrace, deeper into its timeless rhythm, deeper into a state of peaceful surrender to the journey itself. Your breathing has synchronized not just with your camel's gait, but with the very pulse of the desert evening, slow and steady and infinitely calm. The lead camel occasionally lets out a soft rumbling sound, somewhere between a hum and a sigh, and the sound carries back through the line of animals like a gentle wave. Your own camel responds sometimes, adding its voice to the conversation in that ancient language of the desert that needs no translation. The meaning is clear. All is well. The journey continues. Night is coming, and we are ready for it. As the caravan moves deeper into the sea of dunes, you feel the last connections to the ordinary world falling away like clothes you no longer need. Here, in this moving meditation of bells and breathing and gentle motion, you are becoming something simpler, something more essential. The desert is stripping away everything unnecessary, leaving only what matters: breath, heartbeat, the soft rhythm of your camel's gait, and the infinite peace of golden sand stretching toward the darkening sky. The rhythmic creaking of leather beneath you becomes a kind of music, a percussion that your body learns to anticipate and flow with. Your camel's breath creates small puffs of warmth in the cooling air, visible now as twilight deepens the contrast between the animal's dark bulk and the pale sand. Each footfall sends tiny avalanches of sand cascading down the dune faces, creating miniature rivers of gold that catch the last horizontal rays of sunlight. You notice how the silence here isn't empty at all, but rather full of subtle conversations. The sand speaks in whispers as it shifts and settles, grain against grain, creating sounds so soft they're almost imagined. Your guide's robes rustle with each movement of his mount ahead of you, the fabric catching air currents that you're only now beginning to feel against your own skin. The metal fittings of the saddles create their own gentle symphony, not the sharp clanging of bells now, but the softer music of brass rings touching, leather stretching, wooden stirrups creaking in ancient rhythms. The temperature begins its evening descent, and you feel the desert's breath changing. Where the air was still and heavy with heat just an hour ago, now there's movement, subtle currents that lift the finest particles of sand and carry them in lazy spirals around the caravan. These dust devils are so gentle, they feel like whispered secrets, touching your face with the softest brush, leaving the faintest taste of minerals and ancient stone on your lips. Your camel's gait has settled into something that feels eternal, as if this creature has been walking this same rhythm since the beginning of time. The swaying motion rocks you in a way that's completely different from any other movement you've ever experienced. Not the mechanical predictability of vehicles, not the chaos of walking on uneven ground, but something organic and alive. Each step is slightly different, responding to the slope of the dune, the firmness of the sand beneath, the animal's own breathing and balance. The bells on the lead camel have grown softer now, not because they've stopped ringing, but because your ears have learned to weave their sound into the background of this desert evening. They've become part of the rhythm, rather than an interruption to it. You find yourself breathing in time with their gentle chiming, your heartbeat synchronizing with something larger than yourself. As the caravan crests another dune, the landscape opens before you in a way that makes you catch your breath. The undulations of sand stretch endlessly in every direction, but now you can see the patterns they make. Long ridges flow parallel to each other like frozen waves, their crests sharp against the deepening sky. In the valleys between them, shadows pool in shades of purple and blue, creating pathways of coolness that seem to lead towards some distant, unknowable destination. The sand beneath your camel's feet changes texture as you descend into one of these shadowed valleys. Here, protected from the wind, the grains have settled into something firmer, and the footfalls create a different sound, less of the soft shushing you heard on the loose dune faces, and more of a gentle compression, like walking on a beach where the sand is just damp enough to hold its shape. Your camel's breathing becomes more audible in this sheltered space, a steady rhythm that seems to echo softly off the surrounding dune walls. The scents here are different too. Still the clean mineral smell of sun-baked sand, but layered now with something cooler, something that speaks of the night air beginning to settle into these protected spaces. It's not quite moisture. The desert air is far too dry for that, but rather the smell of temperature change itself, of rock and sand beginning their slow release of the day's accumulated heat. Your hands, resting on the saddle's worn leather, have learned to move with the camel's motion, rather than fight against it. The leather is warm from the day's sun but beginning to cool, and its surface tells stories through texture, smooth in some places from years of use, rough in others where salt and sand have left their marks. You can feel the subtle vibrations that travel up through the animal's body with each step, a communication of muscle and bone, an ancient instinct that connects you to something primal and essential. The caravan emerges from the shadowed valley onto another ridge, and here the evening wind finds you again. It's stronger now, not the gentle currents of the valley, but a steady flow of air that carries sounds from incredible distances. You hear the call of a bird somewhere far away, not the sharp cry you might expect, but something musical and haunting that seems to float on the air currents like a physical thing. The wind brings other sounds too, the whisper of sand being lifted and relocated, the soft percussion of granules striking the sparse desert vegetation that somehow manages to survive in this seemingly barren landscape. Your guide raises his hand, and the caravan comes to a gentle stop. In the sudden absence of movement, the desert's evening sounds become clearer, more distinct. Without the rhythm of the camel's footsteps and the creaking of leather, you can hear the sand itself, the tiny avalanches started by your arrival, the soft settling and shifting that never truly stops in this fluid landscape. The silence that follows is profound, but not complete. It's filled with the kind of quiet sounds that only become audible when everything else stops. The breathing of the camels, slower now and deeper. The almost inaudible sound of fabric moving with the wind. Your own heartbeat, suddenly noticeable in the stillness. And underneath it all, something that might be the sound of the desert itself. Not truly audible, but felt rather than heard. A deep thrumming that seems to come from the earth beneath the sand. You realize that this pause isn't random. Your guide has brought the caravan to a halt at a place where the evening light falls in a particular way, where the contours of the dunes create a natural amphitheater of sand and shadow. Here, the rhythms of the desert seem more apparent, more intentional. The way the wind moves through the valleys, the way the temperature differential creates these gentle currents of air, the way the sand responds to every subtle change in pressure and temperature. It's all part of a vast, slow dance that has been continuing for millennia. The camels seem to understand this moment too. They settle into their resting positions with the patience of creatures who know that the desert sets its own schedule. Their breathing slows, their bodies relax into the sand, and they become part of the landscape's rhythm rather than visitors passing through it. You feel yourself settling as well, your own breathing slowing to match the pace of this ancient place. As you sit in this perfect stillness, you become aware of the subtle ways your body has adapted to the desert's rhythm. Your skin has learned to work with the dry air rather than fight against it. Your eyes have adjusted not just to the brightness, but to the particular quality of light that reflects off sand, softer than sunlight on water, warmer than light on stone. Your sense of balance has recalibrated to accommodate the constant gentle motion of camel travel, and now, in stillness, you feel almost as if you're still swaying slightly, still part of that eternal rhythm. The sand around the resting camels begins to show the subtle signs of this brief habitation. Small depressions where the animals have settled, disturbed areas where their legs have shifted for comfort, tiny pathways where sand has cascaded down from their movements. But already, the evening wind is beginning the process of erasure, lifting the finest particles and redistributing them, slowly smoothing the evidence of your passage. By morning, you realize, it will be as if the caravan was never here at all. The desert will have reclaimed this space, reset it to its pristine waiting state. This thought brings a strange comfort, a sense of being part of something so much larger and more permanent than your individual presence. You are a temporary note in the desert's endless song, a brief addition to rhythms that began long before human memory and will continue long after. Rather than making you feel insignificant, this realization brings a profound sense of belonging, of being exactly where you need to be in this moment, part of the eternal conversation between sand and silence, wind and stillness, motion and rest. This profound understanding seems to open something within the desert around you, as if your acceptance of your place in its ancient rhythms has been quietly noted. The quality of silence begins to shift, becoming less empty and more expectant, like the moment before dawn, when even the night-dwelling creatures pause in their activities. You sense a gathering presence, though nothing visible has changed in the moonlit landscape, stretching endlessly in all directions. The feeling is neither alarming nor intrusive, but rather like being gently acknowledged by something that has been watching over these sands for countless centuries. A subtle change in the wind brings with it scents you hadn't noticed before, the green smell of distant oases, the metallic tang of rocks worn smooth by millennia of sandstorms, and something else, something that speaks of deep places beneath the desert floor where underground rivers carve their patient paths through limestone and granite. These fragrances seem to swirl around you with deliberate intent, as if the desert itself is offering you a more intimate introduction to its hidden nature. As you breathe in these deeper desert mysteries, you become aware of movements in your peripheral vision, not the sudden darting of small creatures, but slow, purposeful stirrings that seem to emerge from the landscape itself. Dunes that appeared solid and unchanging now reveal subtle undulations, like the slow breathing of something vast and patient. Rock formations that stood as silent sentinels begin to show themselves as more than mere stone, their shadows shifting in ways that can't entirely be explained by the moon's position overhead. The first guardian reveals itself gradually, so naturally that you might have believed it was always visible if you hadn't been watching the transformation. What you had taken for a weathered boulder, some 30 paces to your left, begins to unfold into a figure of impossible age and dignity. Its form seems carved from the very bedrock of the Sahara, shoulders broad as cliff faces, skin bearing the patina of countless seasons, eyes that hold the depth of hidden springs. It doesn't move toward you, but simply exists more fully, as if your presence has given it permission to be seen. This ancient guardian regards you with an expression of gentle assessment, neither welcoming nor forbidding, but rather taking your measure with the patient thoroughness of one who has witnessed the rise and fall of empires from this same vantage point. There's something profoundly comforting in being observed by a presence so removed from the hurried concerns of ordinary existence. Under its steady gaze, you feel your own breathing slow further, your heartbeat adjusting to rhythms that have nothing to do with human time. To your right, another guardian manifests from what you had perceived as a distinctive pattern in the sand, ripples and ridges that now coalesce into the outline of a figure seated in eternal meditation. This one appears more fluid than the first, its boundaries less distinct, as if it exists in a constant state of gentle dissolution and reformation. Grains of sand drift continuously from its form, only to be replaced by others, creating an almost imperceptible circulation that speaks of the desert's endless capacity for renewal and change. The air around these guardians shimmers differently, not with heat mirages, but with something more substantial, layers of accumulated wisdom made visible perhaps, or the residue of centuries spent in perfect stillness. You find yourself settling more deeply into your own position on the cooling sand, instinctively understanding that this encounter calls for absolute presence and receptivity. A third guardian emerges from the convergence of 3 dune ridges behind you, and this one carries with it the scent of deep time, not the musty odor of decay, but something far more complex, like the smell of minerals slowly crystallizing in hidden caverns, or the fragrance of stone worn smooth by underground streams that have flowed in darkness for geological ages. This guardian moves with the deliberate grace of water finding its level, each gesture carrying the weight of accumulated seasons. As these ancient presences settle into full manifestation around you, the desert soundscape begins to reveal new layers. Beneath the familiar whisper of sand against sand, you become aware of something that might be breathing, but breathing measured in decades rather than seconds. There's a resonance in the ground itself, a vibration so low and steady that you feel it more than hear it, as if the earth's core is humming a lullaby that only becomes audible in places like this, where silence has been allowed to deepen, undisturbed for centuries. The guardians seem to communicate without words, their understanding passing between them, like warmth moving through stone that has been heated by the sun all day. You sense that they are sharing observations about you, not judgments, but simple recognitions, the way one might note the particular way morning light falls across familiar terrain, or how a certain wind pattern shapes the sand into new configurations. One of the guardians, the most fluid one, whose form continues its gentle redistribution of sand, extends what might be considered an arm in your direction. From its gesture, a stream of the finest dust begins to flow, not scattered by any breeze, but moving with its own intelligence. This powder settles around you in intricate patterns that somehow feel meaningful without being decipherable, creating designs that please the eye and calm the mind without requiring interpretation. The sensation of this blessed dust settling on your skin is unlike anything you've experienced. Each grain carries a coolness that penetrates deeper than mere temperature, reaching the places where tension lives and convincing those tight spaces to soften and release. Your shoulders drop without your conscious direction. Your jaw loosens. Even muscles you didn't realize you'd been holding become fluid and easy under this gentle benediction of ancient sand. As more of these healing patterns accumulate around you, you begin to understand that this is the desert's own form of hospitality, not the quick warmth of human welcome, but something far more fundamental and lasting. You are being inducted into a fellowship that spans species and centuries, becoming temporarily part of a community that has maintained its vigil over these sands since long before humans learned to navigate by stars. The Guardian, composed primarily of living rock, begins to emit a sound that exists at the very edge of hearing, less than a whisper, more than silence. It resonates through the ground beneath you and seems to travel up through your bones, carrying with it stories of rainfall that comes perhaps once in a generation, of buried cities slowly revealing themselves as shifting sands migrate to new territories, of the patient geology that builds mountains grain by grain and wears them down with equal persistence. This sonic gift requires no effort to receive. Simply by remaining still and open, you absorb these deep narratives, understanding them not through your mind, but through your body's ancient wisdom, the part of you that still remembers when your ancestors first looked up at these same constellations and felt both humbled and elevated by their vast indifference. The third guardian, the one that moves like water finding its level, approaches with hands cupped around something invisible yet precious. When it reaches you, it opens its palms to reveal what appears to be empty air. But as this nothingness flows over you, you realize you're being gifted with the desert's own quality of spaciousness. Not the cramped emptiness of absence, but the rich fullness of infinite possibility. This invisible offering settles into your lungs, and with each subsequent breath, you find yourself able to inhale not just air, but the vast openness that stretches to every horizon. Your chest expands to accommodate perspectives that encompass not merely this single night, but the grand sweep of seasons and decades, the rise and fall of civilizations, the patient work of wind and weather that shapes continents over millions of years. Under the combined influence of these three ancient guardians, the rock-steady presence, the flowing continuity, and the water-like adaptability, you feel yourself being gently inducted into desert time. This isn't the rushed chronology of human schedules and deadlines, but something far more generous and sustainable. Minutes become meaningless measurements. What matters is the quality of each breath, the depth of each moment of stillness, the richness of simply being present in this place, where presence itself is valued above all other offerings. The guardians arrange themselves around you in a protective configuration that feels both ceremonial and utterly natural, as if countless travelers before you have been welcomed into this same formation under these same stars. Their combined presence creates a sanctuary within the already sacred space of the desert night, a place where the usual urgencies of existence simply cannot penetrate, where the only requirements are breathing and witnessing and allowing yourself to be held by something vastly larger and more patient than individual concern. The warmth reaches you first, not just heat, but something more fundamental, like the earth itself exhaling a long-held breath. Your guide moves with practiced ease toward a low arrangement of stones that seems to have emerged from the desert floor itself, weathered and patient, darkened by countless fires that have bloomed here before yours. The rocks hold the memory of flame, their surfaces smooth from wind and time, creating a perfect circle that draws you naturally forward. Your feet find their own rhythm across the cooling sand, each step sinking slightly into the granules that still hold traces of the day's accumulated sunshine. The kindling appears almost by magic. Slender branches of argan wood, twisted fragments of desert shrubs, small bundles of dried grasses that crackle with anticipation between weathered fingers. There's something deeply satisfying about watching these simple materials transform, about witnessing the ancient alchemy that turns scattered fragments into focused warmth. The first spark catches with a whisper, then grows into a small constellation of orange light that dances against the gathering darkness. As the flames establish themselves, painting moving shadows across the circle of stones, you settle onto a cushion that seems to have been placed precisely where your body wants to rest. The fabric beneath you is soft with age and use, woven in patterns that speak of distant markets and skilled hands, colors that have mellowed into earth tones under desert suns. Your spine finds its natural curve as you lean back slightly, the warmth from the fire reaching across the space to touch your face with gentle fingers. The sound of water being poured creates its own music, a crystalline counterpoint to the fire's quiet crackling. Steam rises from a brass kettle that catches the firelight and throws it back in burnished gleams, the metal worn smooth from countless hands, countless nights like this one. The scent begins even before the tea is ready, mint leaves releasing their bright essence into the warming air, mixing with the woody smoke and creating something entirely new, entirely perfect for this moment, suspended between day and night. Your fellow travelers arrange themselves around the fire's circumference, each person finding their own perfect distance from the flames. Some sit cross-legged on woven rugs, others lean back against saddle-shaped cushions, all of them settling into positions that suggest they could remain here for hours without discomfort. The fire creates an intimate boundary, defining this space as separate from the vast darkness beyond, yet somehow making that darkness feel not distant, but companionable, like a presence that chooses to remain just outside the circle of light. The first glass of mint tea arrives in your hands with ceremonial grace. A small, clear vessel that holds both warmth and fragrance, the liquid itself a pale amber that seems to glow from within. The glass is hot against your palms, requiring the delicate dance of fingertips and gentle adjustments that becomes its own meditation. When you lift it to your lips, the steam carries more than scent. It carries stories, traditions, the accumulated wisdom of countless desert evenings just like this one. The tea itself is a revelation of balance, mint that awakens without overwhelming, sweetness that enhances rather than masks, warmth that spreads through your chest and settles into your bones with profound satisfaction. Each sip seems to slow time a little more, to create space between moments for deeper appreciation. The flavor lingers, mixing with the night air and the distant scent of sage, becoming part of the evening's complex perfume. Someone begins to speak, their voice low and unhurried, words that seem to emerge naturally from the fire's hypnotic rhythm. The story unfolds without urgency, perhaps a tale of desert spirits who dance in the hours before dawn, or merchants who discovered hidden oases by following the flight patterns of nighthawks. The words themselves become less important than their cadence, the way they weave through the crackling flames and find their way into the spaces between your thoughts. Other voices join in, creating a gentle symphony of shared memory and imagination. Stories of stars that serve as guides for lost travelers, of desert roses that bloom only under the full moon, of ancient cities that shimmer like mirages at the edge of perception. Each tale carries the rhythm of the desert itself, patient, unhurried, full of pauses that allow meaning to settle like sand into its natural patterns. The fire burns lower now, the flames growing more intimate, more contemplative. The light it casts becomes warmer, more golden, creating a smaller but somehow more precious circle of illumination. Your tea glass is refilled without your asking, the server moving with quiet grace that never interrupts the flow of conversation or the deeper flow of the evening itself. Between stories, silence settles like another guest joining the circle. Not empty silence, but rich quiet filled with the soft sounds of the fire consuming its fuel, the distant call of a night bird, the subtle shift of sand cooling under the emerging stars. These moments of wordlessness feel as valuable as the spoken tales, creating space for the stories to take root in your imagination, for your own memories to surface and mingle with the shared ones. The mint tea continues to work its gentle magic, each cup somehow different from the last despite being prepared from the same pot. The variations are subtle. Sometimes the mint seems more prominent. Sometimes the underlying tea asserts itself. Sometimes the sweetness blooms more fully on your tongue. These small changes create their own narrative, a liquid story that parallels the spoken ones, reminding you that even the most familiar experiences can surprise you when you pay attention. As the evening deepens, the stories become more contemplative, more connected to the immediate experience of sitting together under this particular configuration of stars. Someone speaks of the way desert nights can reveal truths that daylight keeps hidden, of how the vast silence creates space for inner voices, usually drowned out by daily noise. Another voice adds thoughts about the peculiar generosity of sharing warmth in a place where warmth becomes precious, about how fire creates community among strangers. The flames have settled into steady, meditative tongues of orange and blue, their movement becoming more predictable, yet somehow more mesmerizing. You find your attention drifting between the stories and the visual poetry of combustion, between the taste of mint on your lips and the sensation of warm air moving across your skin. Everything blends into a seamless experience where the boundaries between different senses seem less important than their combined effect. Your cushion has molded itself to your body's contours, creating perfect support for this extended evening of sitting and listening. The fire's warmth reaches just far enough to keep the night's coolness at bay without overwhelming, creating a microclimate of perfect comfort that seems designed specifically for the sharing of stories and the slow consumption of tea. Your breathing has synchronized with the evening's rhythm, deeper than usual, more conscious, as if the desert air requires more attention to fully appreciate its clarity and coolness. The conversation begins to include longer pauses, moments where each person seems to retreat into their own contemplation while remaining fully present to the group. These silences feel companionable rather than awkward, like the natural breathing spaces that music requires to be truly musical. The fire provides a focal point during these quiet interludes, its constant small movements offering just enough visual interest to keep your mind pleasantly occupied without demanding active thought. Another round of tea arrives, and you notice how the ritual of receiving and drinking has become automatic, your hands knowing exactly how to cradle the warm glass, your lips finding the rim without conscious guidance. The familiarity feels ancient, as if you've participated in this same ceremony countless times before, as if your body holds cellular memories of other desert nights, other fires, other circles of strangers who became companions through the simple act of sharing warmth and words and time. The tea tastes like continuity itself, like the liquid embodiment of traditions that connect you to something larger than this single evening, this particular arrangement of people and place and purpose. The warmth spreads through your chest as you set down the small glass, the final drops of tea still clinging to its curved walls. The fire has settled into a quieter rhythm now, its flames dancing lower but burning steadier. And gradually, your attention begins to lift from the circle of faces to the vast dome of sky that arches overhead. The transition feels natural, inevitable, as if the tea has prepared your senses for this next layer of the night's unfolding story. Above you, the stars have deepened in their intensity. What seemed bright an hour ago now blazes with a clarity that makes you catch your breath softly. Out here, so far from any city's glow, the night sky reveals itself in its full, unfiltered glory. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness like a river of pale fire, its cloudy band so vivid you feel you could reach up and touch its flowing light. Individual stars pulse with colors you rarely notice in other places, some burning blue-white, others glowing golden, still others tinted with the faintest suggestion of red or green. One of your companions, an elderly man whose weathered hands speak of decades spent under this same sky, begins to point upward. His voice carries the gentle authority of someone who has read these celestial maps since childhood. He speaks of constellations you recognize, Orion striding across the winter heavens, the Big Dipper pouring its starlight into the desert, but also of star patterns that belong specifically to this place, this culture, this way of seeing the night. His finger traces invisible lines between points of light, connecting distant suns into the shapes of animals and heroes and stories. You find yourself leaning back, your shoulders settling against the soft sand that has been warmed by hours of sitting around the fire. The position allows you to take in more of the sky at once, to see how the stars form not just individual constellations, but an entire narrative written across the darkness. The desert silence makes their light seem almost audible, as if each star contributes its own note to some vast, slow symphony that plays just beyond the range of human hearing. The man's voice continues, weaving tales of how these same stars guided caravans across trackless expanses of sand, how traders and travelers learned to read the sky like a book. He speaks of the North Star, steady and unchanging, and of other stars that wheel through the seasons, marking time in their ancient patterns. His words create a bridge between the immediate sensory experience of lying here in the sand and the deeper currents of history and tradition that flow beneath this moment. As you listen, you begin to understand that you're learning more than just the names and positions of celestial objects. You're being initiated into a way of seeing that treats the night sky as a living document, a record of stories and wisdom accumulated over centuries. Each constellation carries not just its mythological meaning, but practical knowledge. Which stars rise before dawn during the planting season? Which formations signal the approach of winter rains? How the moon's phases align with the rhythms of desert life? A meteor streaks across the sky, its brief flash drawing gasps of delight from the group. The timing feels perfect, as if the universe itself is participating in this lesson, offering a demonstration of the dynamic, ever-changing nature of the celestial realm. The shooting star's trail fades quickly, but its passage leaves everyone looking upward with renewed attention, scanning the darkness for other surprises. You notice how your eyes have continued to adjust to the darkness throughout the evening. Details that were invisible when you first looked up now reveal themselves with stunning clarity. The Milky Way shows subtle variations in brightness and density along its length. Fainter stars emerge from the background, like shy creatures venturing into view. Even the darkness itself proves to be not uniform black, but a complex tapestry of deep blues and purples, with the faintest suggestion of other colors at the very edge of perception. The conversation around the fire has grown quieter, more contemplative, as if the vastness overhead naturally draws people into a more reflective state of mind. Someone asks about planets, and your guide points out the steady, unwinking light of Venus hanging low on the horizon. Unlike the stars, which seem to pulse and twinkle through the atmosphere, the planet glows with an even radiance that speaks of its closer proximity, its more solid presence in the sky. The fire crackles softly, sending up occasional sparks that seem to want to join their celestial cousins overhead. You watch these tiny embers rise and fade, creating a momentary connection between the earthbound flame and the distant suns. The juxtaposition strikes you as profound. The same nuclear fire that powers the stars echoed in miniature by the chemical combustion of burning wood, both processes converting matter into light and warmth. As the evening progresses, you begin to sense the subtle rotation of the earth beneath you. The constellations shift almost imperceptibly across the sky, their positions relative to the horizon gradually changing as the planet turns on its axis. This movement, usually invisible in the brief moments most people spend looking at stars, becomes apparent during this extended observation. You feel yourself as a passenger on a spinning world, hurtling through space at incredible speeds while maintaining the perfect conditions for life, for consciousness, for this very moment of wonder and recognition. The sand beneath you has cooled somewhat since the sun set, but it still retains enough warmth to feel comfortable against your back. Small sounds drift across the desert, the distant call of a night bird, the whisper of wind through thorny shrubs, the settling of cooling rocks. These earthly sounds create a gentle counterpoint to the cosmic silence overhead, grounding you in the immediate physical reality of your desert refuge while your mind ranges across the light years. Your guide tells a story about how his grandfather taught him to navigate by the stars, how they would set out across the desert in the dark hours before dawn, using only the stellar compass overhead to find their way to distant oases and trading posts. The tale carries the weight of lived experience, of practical knowledge tested against the harsh realities of desert survival. You realize you're listening to the continuation of an oral tradition stretching back countless generations, each storyteller adding their own observations and insights to the accumulated wisdom. The night air carries subtle scents that seem to intensify under the starlight. The green smell of hardy desert plants, the mineral odor of sand and stone, the lingering fragrance of the tea and the wood smoke from your fire. These earthly perfumes create an olfactory foundation for the visual feast above, reminding you that you experience this cosmic spectacle through a physical body rooted in the specific chemistry and biology of this planet. Someone begins to sing, very softly, a melody that seems to echo the rhythm of the constellations overhead. The song has no words you recognize, but its emotional content translates perfectly. Wonder, reverence, a deep appreciation for beauty that exists beyond human creation or control. Other voices join in, some adding harmonies, others contributing their own complementary melodies, creating a musical conversation that weaves together different cultural traditions and personal expressions of awe. The music seems to resonate with the desert itself, carried by the still air across distances that would swallow such gentle sounds during the day. Out here, in this profound quiet, even whispered songs can travel far, becoming part of the night's larger symphony. You add your own voice, humming along with melodies that feel familiar even though you've never heard them before, tapping into some universal human response to starlight and darkness and the companionship of others who share this sense of wonder. The melodies seem to emerge from the very grains of sand beneath your feet, rising up through the earth and into the cool night air where they mingle with the whispered conversations and gentle laughter of your companions. Your voice finds its place in this impromptu desert chorus, not performing, but simply participating in something as natural as breathing. The sound weaves between the scattered rocks and around the bases of the ancient palms, creating echoes that return to you transformed, as if the landscape itself is adding its own harmonies to your song. The fire has settled into a steady rhythm of soft crackling, sending occasional sparks spiraling upward to meet the stars. Someone nearby begins tapping a gentle percussion against what sounds like a metal tea glass, the crystalline pings adding structure to the flowing melodies. Another voice joins in with a low humming that seems to anchor all the other sounds, providing a foundation that allows the higher notes to float and dance above it, like desert winds playing across stone formations. You find yourself swaying slightly as you sit, your body responding to rhythms that feel older than memory. The songs shift and change without any obvious signal or conductor, flowing from one melody into another, with the fluid grace of sand dunes reshaping themselves under starlight. Some voices drop out while others emerge, creating a constantly evolving soundscape that mirrors the way shadows move across the desert floor as the moon continues its slow arc overhead. Your own humming rises and falls with this natural tide, sometimes leading, sometimes following, always part of the greater whole. The night air carries these human songs outward into the vast silence of the Sahara, where they encounter the desert's own quiet music, the whisper of cooling sand settling into nighttime configurations, the distant call of a desert fox somewhere among the rocks, the almost imperceptible sound of wind moving through valleys you cannot see but somehow sense stretching away into darkness. All of these natural voices seem to respond to your group's gentle singing, as if the desert has been waiting all day for this moment when humans remember how to add their voices to the ancient conversation between earth and sky. One of the older members of your group begins what sounds like a traditional Berber song, the words flowing in a language you don't understand but whose meaning reaches you through pure emotion. The melody rises and falls like the contours of distant mountain ranges, carrying stories of generations who have gathered under these same constellations, adding their voices to this same eternal chorus. You close your eyes and let the unfamiliar syllables wash over you, feeling connected not just to this moment, but to countless other desert nights stretching back through centuries of human presence in this timeless landscape. The song speaks of journeys across endless dunes, of oases discovered in dreams and found at dawn, of stars that guide travelers home, and winds that carry messages between hearts separated by vast distances. Though you understand none of the words, you find yourself following the melody's emotional architecture, your own voice blending with others to support the storyteller's narrative thread. The fire's warmth on your face and the cool night air at your back create a perfect balance, like being held between day and night, between the known and the mysterious. As the traditional song concludes with a series of ascending notes that seem to climb directly into the star field above, a comfortable silence settles over the group. But it's not the end of the music, rather a pause between movements in a much longer composition. Someone begins a gentle lullaby in what might be French or Arabic, the words soft and rounded, designed more for their sound than their meaning. The melody is simple enough that you find yourself picking up the refrain after just one repetition, adding your voice to lyrics that speak of desert roses blooming in moonlight and ancient caravan routes marked by fallen stars. The night has reached that perfect temperature where the boundary between your body and the surrounding air seems to blur. You're warm enough from the fire's glow, but cool enough from the desert's natural nighttime chill that you feel perfectly suspended in comfort. The singing continues around this circle of contentment, with voices rising and falling in harmonies that need no rehearsal, no planning, no formal structure. They emerge from the simple pleasure of human beings sharing breath and sound under a sky so vast it makes all earthly concerns feel beautifully small and manageable. A young voice begins what sounds like a contemporary song, but sung so softly and slowly that it transforms into something entirely new, a meditation on longing and home and the strange comfort of being far from everything familiar. The melody adapts itself to the desert setting, finding spaces between the ancient rhythms established by earlier songs, weaving modern yearning into timeless patterns of human expression. You realize that this is what music has always been. People finding ways to make beauty together, to transform individual experiences into shared emotional landscapes. The fire shifts slightly, sending a brief shower of sparks upward, where they dance briefly among the lower stars before fading back into darkness. The movement draws your attention upward again, where the Milky Way has become even more prominent as the night deepens. Its cloudy river of light seems to pulse gently in rhythm with the singing, as if the galaxy itself is breathing along with your collective voices. You have the strange sensation that your songs are somehow adding to the cosmic music, that your small human chorus is contributing to something much larger than you can comprehend. The singing has become more exploratory now, with individuals offering brief solo moments, a few lines of melody, a wordless vocal riff, a fragment of rhythm beaten against palm or thigh. These musical offerings rise up like gifts being presented to the night, each one received with appreciative murmurs or gentle humming responses from the group. You find yourself wanting to contribute something of your own, some small melodic phrase that captures what this moment feels like. But you're also completely content to simply receive these sounds, to let them wash through you like warm water flowing over stone. Someone begins creating rhythmic sounds by running their fingers along the rim of a tea glass, producing a singing tone that shifts in pitch as the liquid level changes. Another person starts a quiet beatboxing rhythm, all breath and soft percussion that wouldn't carry beyond this intimate circle, but provides a perfect foundation for the melodic improvisations happening above it. The music has become completely fluid now, following no traditional song structures, but creating its own logic based on the group's collective intuition about what sounds belong together in this desert night symphony. You add your own voice to a wordless harmony that builds gradually, each person finding their own note within a chord that seems to expand and contract like something alive. The sound rises until it feels like it might lift your entire group off the desert floor, then settles back into intimate whispers that barely disturb the air between you. This is music as pure communication, bypassing language and cultural difference to speak directly from heart to heart, breath to breath, human spirit to human spirit, under the vast democracy of stars. The night continues to deepen around your circle of song and warmth, bringing with it new layers of desert sounds as different creatures begin their own nocturnal activities. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls with a voice like liquid silver. Small rustling sounds suggest tiny desert inhabitants moving about their mysterious business among the rocks and sparse vegetation. Even these natural sounds seem to find their place within the musical conversation your group has created, adding wild harmonies to your civilized melodies, reminding you that you are guests in this ancient landscape, temporarily borrowing space in an ongoing conversation between earth and sky that has been continuing for millions of years. This harmony between human and desert creates a profound sense of belonging that settles into your bones, like warmth from a perfect fire. As the evening deepens and the music naturally finds its conclusion, your Berber hosts begin to speak of rest, their voices carrying the same gentle authority that has guided every moment of this extraordinary day. The prospect of sleep under these vast desert skies feels less like an ending and more like another kind of beginning, a doorway into dreams that might be touched by this ancient landscape's timeless wisdom. The nomad tents await you like patient guardians against the night, their dark silhouettes rising from the sand in graceful curves that seem to echo the undulating horizon. These are not the bright modern camping structures you might expect, but traditional dwellings woven from dark camel hair and goat wool, their surfaces rough beneath your fingertips, yet somehow inviting. The fabric has been weathered by countless desert seasons, softened by wind and sun into something that feels almost alive, breathing gently in the night breeze that never quite stops moving across these open spaces. Your guide lifts the tent flap for you, and stepping inside feels like entering a cocoon crafted specifically for dreams. The interior space is surprisingly spacious, with enough height for you to stand comfortably, yet intimate enough to feel protective and secure. Thick woven rugs cover the sandy floor in layers, their patterns geometric and hypnotic in the soft light of a small battery-powered lantern that casts everything in warm amber tones. The rugs beneath your feet have a springy resilience, like walking on a natural mattress that has been perfectly designed by generations of desert travelers who understood exactly what the human body needs after a long day under the open sky. The air inside the tent holds its own particular fragrance, different from the crisp desert atmosphere outside. Here, you breathe in the earthy smell of wool and the faint sweetness of the herbs that have been tucked into small cloth pouches and hung from the tent's interior framework. Lavender mingles with something more exotic, perhaps the dried leaves of desert plants whose names you don't know, but whose calming properties seem to work on some level deeper than conscious thought. The scent creates an atmosphere of sanctuary, of a space set apart from the vastness outside and dedicated entirely to rest and restoration. Your sleeping area has been prepared with obvious care and attention to comfort. Several thick blankets have been layered to create a bed that looks surprisingly inviting, their textures ranging from the smooth coolness of cotton to the dense warmth of wool that will prove perfect as the desert night grows cooler. A small pillow wrapped in soft fabric sits at the head of this arrangement, and beside it, a clay water vessel sweats gently in the dry air, promising cool relief if you wake thirsty in the night. The simple perfection of these arrangements speaks to centuries of nomadic wisdom, each element chosen and placed with the knowledge of exactly what a desert traveler needs for deep, restorative sleep. As you settle onto the blankets, their warmth rises to meet your tired body, and you can feel the day's adventures beginning to transform into something softer and more dreamlike in your memory. The firm support of the layered rugs beneath the bedding cradles you with just the right balance of comfort and stability, while the tent walls around you provide a sense of enclosure without stuffiness. Small gaps where the fabric doesn't quite meet allow gentle movements of air to flow through, carrying with them the ongoing conversation of the desert night, the whisper of wind across sand, the distant call of a night bird, the almost inaudible settling sounds of a landscape preparing for sleep. Outside your tent, you can hear the quiet movements of your companions settling into their own temporary homes for the night. The soft sounds of zippers and rustling fabric, low murmurs of conversation gradually fading into contented silence. These human sounds feel comforting rather than intrusive, reminders that while you rest in individual cocoons of privacy, you remain part of a small community sharing this remarkable experience. The knowledge that others sleep nearby adds a layer of security to the solitude, like being held gently within a larger embrace of fellowship and shared adventure. The tent walls themselves seem to breathe around you, expanding slightly with each gust of wind and then settling back with a soft sigh. This gentle movement creates a rhythm that's almost maternal in its consistency, a slow pulse that seems designed to synchronize with your own breathing and heart rate. The sound of wind against the tent fabric is unlike anything you might hear in a solid building. It's more musical, more alive, like being inside an instrument that the desert plays with infinite gentleness and skill. Through the tent's fabric, the light from the stars filters in as a very faint glow, not bright enough to disturb sleep, but present enough to remind you of the cosmic canopy that stretches overhead. Occasionally, you catch glimpses of this starlight through the small opening where the tent flap doesn't quite seal completely. Tiny pinpricks of brilliance that seem to wink at you like friendly eyes watching over your rest. The knowledge that this same starlight has shone down on countless nomadic camps across centuries of desert nights adds a profound sense of continuity to your experience, connecting you to an unbroken chain of travelers who have found shelter and dreams in spaces just like this one. As your body fully relaxes into the comfortable bedding, you become aware of how completely the desert silence differs from any quiet you've ever experienced before. This isn't the silence of empty spaces, but rather a fullness that exists below the threshold of ordinary hearing. It's the silence of vast distances and ancient patience, of a landscape that measures time in geological epochs rather than human moments. Within this profound quiet, your own breathing becomes audible and rhythmic, creating a personal soundtrack that blends seamlessly with the tent's gentle movements and the barely perceptible whisper of wind across endless expanses of sand. The temperature inside the tent finds its own perfect balance, cool enough to be refreshing, yet warm enough to feel protective. The thick tent walls provide insulation from the desert's extremes, while still allowing you to feel connected to the natural rhythms of night and day. As your body heat combines with the blanket's warmth, you create a personal microclimate that seems designed for the deepest possible rest, a pocket of ideal conditions in the middle of one of Earth's most challenging environments. Your thoughts begin to drift like sand, carried on gentle breezes, shifting and reshaping without effort or direction. The day's experiences transform into dream material, the colors of sunset becoming abstract paintings in your mind, the music around the fire echoing in imaginary melodies, the taste of mint tea lingering like a sweet promise of tomorrow's adventures. These memories don't demand analysis or processing. They simply flow through your consciousness like water through sand, leaving behind only their essential beauty and wonder. Sleep approaches with the gradual inevitability of sunrise, natural and unhurried. Your breathing deepens automatically, drawing in the herb-scented air and releasing the day's accumulated tensions with each exhale. The blankets seem to adjust themselves around your relaxing body, finding exactly the right weight and warmth to support your transition into dreams. Outside, the desert continues its ancient conversations. Wind with sand, stars with earth, night with the promise of dawn still hours away. But these sounds no longer require your conscious attention. They become instead the background music of sleep, the lullaby that this landscape has been singing to travelers for thousands of years. The tent holds you like a hand cupped around a flame, protective yet gentle, allowing the essential you to burn steady and bright while shielding you from anything that might disturb your rest. In this perfect shelter, surrounded by infinity yet cradled in intimacy, your mind releases its grip on wakefulness and allows itself to drift into the particular dreams that can only come to those who sleep under desert stars, in spaces where the boundary between earth and sky becomes as permeable as the fabric walls that breathe gently around your surrendering consciousness. The dreams that come are unlike any you have known before, carrying whispers that seem to arrive not from sleep, but from the very air itself. Ancient currents that have traveled across this desert for millennia, gathering stories from every grain of sand they have touched. These winds speak in languages older than the cities whose lights you left behind, their voices threading through your tent with such delicate persistence that you cannot tell where your breathing ends and their murmuring begins. You find yourself listening without effort, understanding without words, as if these desert breezes are sharing secrets that your body has always known, but your daily mind had forgotten. The fabric walls around you respond to each gust with barely perceptible movements, creating the softest percussion as the material whispers against itself, a rhythm so gentle it becomes part of your heartbeat rather than separate from it. These sounds weave themselves into your drowsing consciousness, like a lullaby composed by the landscape itself, each note perfectly timed to the gradual slowing of your thoughts. The tent breathes with the desert's rhythm, expanding and contracting in harmony with forces that have shaped this land since before humans walked beneath these stars. In this borderland between waking and sleeping, you become aware of how the wind carries scents that tell stories of distance and time. There is the clean mineral smell of stone that has been heated by day and is now releasing its warmth into the cooling air, mixed with something indefinably green that speaks of hidden water sources and secret gardens tucked into distant oases. Occasionally, the breeze brings hints of spices that might have traveled from markets hundreds of miles away, cinnamon and cardamom notes, so faint they register more as memory than immediate sensation, as if the wind itself has been seasoned by its journey across continents. Your body settles deeper into your bedding, feeling how the ground beneath supports you with the solid certainty of stone, while somehow remaining perfectly comfortable, as if the earth itself has arranged itself to cradle your form. The sleeping arrangement feels less like resting on the desert floor and more like being held by the desert's palm, surrounded by warmth that rises from below and cool air that flows from above, creating a perfect envelope of temperature that adjusts itself to your needs without any conscious effort on your part. The wind's voice changes as the night progresses, sometimes barely a whisper that makes the faintest rustle through the tense sky lines, other times strengthening to a more confident murmur that brings with it the sound of sand shifting somewhere beyond your shelter, tiny avalanches of grains finding new arrangements in the darkness. These sounds of movement and change feel deeply comforting rather than disturbing, reminding you that you are part of a living landscape that continues its ancient work of reshaping itself even while you rest. Each breath you take fills your lungs with air that tastes of clarity and space, so different from the air you know in your daily life that it seems to clean you from the inside out, removing residues of stress and urgency that you hadn't realized you were carrying. This desert air moves through you like a gentle internal breeze, refreshing corners of your being that rarely receive such attention. Your exhales release not just carbon dioxide, but something less tangible, the accumulated weight of schedules and obligations flowing out of you on each breath and being carried away by these ancient currents. The temperature around you has found that perfect point where your body requires no adjustment, no pulling of covers or shifting for comfort. The night air flows over any exposed skin with the same gentle consistency as silk that has been warmed by sunlight, while your bedding maintains exactly the right weight and warmth to support your body's natural preparation for deep rest. This balance feels so precise that it might have been orchestrated specifically for this moment, as if the desert itself has been waiting to provide exactly this experience of perfect comfort. Through the tense walls, you can hear the wind encountering the larger landscape around you, the way it moves differently through the varied terrain of this desert night. There is the sound it makes brushing across flat expanses of sand, a continuous whisper like pages being turned in the world's largest book. Then there are the different notes it produces when meeting rocks and small cliffs, creating hollow tones and brief echoes that add depth and texture to the night's composition. These varying sounds create a three-dimensional audio map of your surroundings, letting you sense the geography around you, even with your eyes closed. The wind brings with it an ancient patience that seems to slow time itself, stretching each moment until it becomes spacious enough to truly inhabit. In this expanded time, your awareness drifts and flows like smoke, sometimes focusing on a particular sensation, other times diffusing into a general sense of floating contentment. The usual urgency that drives your thoughts during waking hours has been completely dissolved by this desert alchemy, replaced by a rhythm that moves in harmony with geological time, where change is measured not in minutes or hours, but in seasons and centuries. Your mind begins to release its hold on the specific details that normally occupy it, letting go of names and plans and future concerns with the same ease that sand releases the heat it has absorbed during the day. Instead of thoughts, you find yourself filled with sensations and impressions that require no analysis or response, simply existing as part of the flow of experience that moves through you. Like these desert winds move through the landscape, there is nothing to solve or understand, only this gentle current of awareness that connects you to something far larger and older than your individual concerns. The sounds around you gradually become less distinct, not because they are fading, but because you are settling into a state where sound becomes texture rather than information, where the wind's voice blends with your heartbeat and breathing to create a unified rhythm that rocks you deeper into rest. The boundaries between your body and the surrounding space begin to soften, as if you are slowly becoming part of the desert night itself, your consciousness expanding to include the tent, the sand, the moving air, and the vast stillness that contains it all. In this state of expanded awareness, you understand without words how these winds have been the desert's messengers for countless ages, carrying stories between distant places, connecting far-flung oases and mountain ranges in a network of shared air and common breath. Tonight, you have become part of this ancient communication system, a temporary station where these traveling winds can rest and share their accumulated wisdom before continuing their journey across the infinite spaces of sand and stone and starlight. The wind's touch on your tent becomes increasingly gentle, as if recognizing that you are transitioning into deeper rest and adjusting its presence accordingly. The sounds become more distant and dreamy, less like wind and more like the earth itself breathing, vast, slow breaths that encompass entire landscapes and seasonal cycles. Your own breathing aligns with these deeper rhythms, each inhalation drawing in not just air, but the accumulated peace of this ancient place, each exhalation releasing you further into the profound rest that the desert offers to those who trust themselves to its timeless embrace. In this deep stillness, where your breath moves with the ancient rhythms of the desert itself, something almost imperceptible begins to shift in the quality of darkness around you. Not yet light, not even the faintest suggestion of it, but rather a subtle change in how the night holds itself, like the moment before a tide turns, when the ocean pauses between one motion and the next. The air carries the faintest whisper of coolness, that particular desert freshness that comes in the hour before dawn, when the sand has released the last of yesterday's warmth into the star-scattered sky above. Your body rests deeply in the soft depression your form has created in the dune slope, the sand molded perfectly around you, still holding traces of the day's heat, like a gentle memory against your back and shoulders. The fine grains have settled into the most comfortable arrangement possible, supporting you with the kind of natural accommodation that only comes from time and patience. Each grain seems to know its place, creating a surface that yields just enough while remaining steady and sure. The silence has become so complete, it's almost a presence unto itself, vast and encompassing, broken only by the occasional soft whisper of sand settling somewhere in the distance. Even that sound seems reverent, respectful of the profound quiet that blankets this landscape. Your ears, attuned now to the desert's subtle communications, detect the faintest suggestion of movement. Not wind exactly, but the way air moves differently when the earth begins its slow turn toward morning. It's a sensation more than a sound, a barely perceptible shift in pressure that speaks of changes still hours away. Above, the stars continue their ancient dance, but there's something different in their quality now, a subtle shift in how they pierce the darkness. They seem both more brilliant and more distant, as if the approaching dawn, still far below the horizon, has begun to clarify the atmosphere in ways too delicate for conscious perception. The constellation patterns that have kept you company through the night appear etched with crystalline precision against the deep indigo canvas of sky, each point of light distinct and unwavering. The sand beneath your palms, when you shift slightly, feels different too, cooler now, with a firmness that comes when the desert's heat finally dissipates completely. Each grain seems more defined, less liquid than it was in the warmth of full night. Your fingers trace small patterns in the surface beside you, and the sand responds with a soft whispering sound, each movement creating tiny avalanches of grains that resettle with the gentlest possible rustling. The texture feels almost silk-like in this cool hour, smooth and fine between your fingers. A scent drifts across the dunes, so faint it might be imagined. The clean, mineral smell that comes when desert air moves over sand that has been completely cleansed by the night's coolness. It carries hints of distant stone, of minerals baked and rebaked by countless cycles of heat and cold, of spaces so vast and clean that the air itself seems purified by its journey across them. You breathe it in slowly, and it seems to clear something deep in your lungs, as if this air carries properties that ordinary air lacks. Your body has found a state of rest so profound that you're barely aware of its boundaries anymore. The gentle curve of your spine follows the natural contour of the dune, and your limbs rest where they fell, completely relaxed, fingers slightly curled, feet fallen open. The distinction between where you end and the sand begins has become beautifully unclear. You exist in perfect harmony with this place, neither separate from it nor dissolved into it, but simply present in the most natural way possible. The darkness around you holds a quality of anticipation now, though dawn is still hours away. It's as if the desert itself knows what's coming, has begun the subtle preparations that precede the daily miracle of sunrise. The air feels poised, expectant, like the pause before music begins. Even in your deep rest, some part of you senses this building towards something magnificent, though there's no urgency in it. No need to do anything but continue resting here, breathing slowly, being present to whatever unfolds. The coolness in the air has deepened slightly, bringing with it a clarity that makes everything seem more vivid, despite the darkness. The sand grains catch what little starlight reaches them, creating tiny sparkles that appear and disappear as your perspective shifts minutely. It's as if the desert is wearing jewelry made of light itself, countless microscopic gems scattered across every surface. When you move your head slightly, new constellations of these tiny sparkles appear, a ground-level mirror of the star field above. Your breathing has synchronized so completely with the desert's rhythms that each inhalation feels like it draws in not just air, but something more essential. The peace that comes from places where time moves differently, where the urgent concerns of daily life cannot penetrate. Each exhalation releases you deeper into this timeless state, where minutes and hours become irrelevant, where existence simplifies to this: breath, heartbeat, the gentle pressure of sand, the infinite dome of stars. The quality of stillness continues to evolve in ways too subtle for ordinary perception, but perfectly clear to your deeply rested awareness. It's as if layers of silence are revealing themselves, each deeper than the last. First, the silence of no sounds, then the silence beneath that, and deeper still, the silence that exists at the heart of all sound. Your mind, quieted by hours of this profound peace, rests in these deeper layers like a stone settled on the bottom of a clear, still pool. Thank you for traveling with Sleepy Travel Stories. May your dreams take you to beautiful places tonight. Sleep well, and we'll see you on the next journey.